Hi everyone, this is vocabulary list number 9. Please make sure you're taking Cornell notes and write down any examples or root words that I say that might help you remember what these words mean. And if at any point I'm going too fast or you need more time to write down the definitions, please pause the recording so you don't feel too rushed. The first word is abridge, and to abridge means to make shorter. So you can either make it shorter in length or words, but you tend to keep the essential features, the most important parts. A lot of times people who listen to books on CD or they listen to audio versions of a book being read, so they'll put it on their iPod or on their iPhones or whatever device they use and pop in their earbuds and they'll listen to a recording of a book. And so as the person reads it, a lot of times these are abridged recordings, which means you basically you're going to hear most of the book, but they've taken out certain scenes, maybe parts of chapters that aren't essential to understanding the book itself. So it's a shortened, abridged version that you'll often hear if you listen to an audio version. So anytime you take a larger piece of work and you kind of cut it down and you keep the most essential pieces, but you do cut out some pieces, you are either reading or listening to an abridged version. The second word is abrupt, and abrupt describes anything that either the beginning, the ending, or there's some kind of sudden change or break. I usually think of abrupt in terms of endings. So if something ends kind of abruptly, it means it ended really quickly without really giving you a sense of completion or closure. So beginning, ending, or changing anything suddenly will feel really abrupt. A lot of times there's, at the end of a movie, if the movie doesn't have a really clear conclusion or it stops kind of suddenly in a moment that you wouldn't expect to be the ending, it might feel very abrupt, like it happened too quickly. There wasn't enough of really like a completion or there wasn't enough closure for you as the reader. I also feel this way sometimes about books that end very suddenly. So here's an image of a railroad track that has a very abrupt ending, right? You're not going to go any further, otherwise you end up in the water. So a very quick, sudden, abrupt ending. Clamorous. Clamorous describes any urgent complaint or demand. Usually this is associated with a sound, so a loud sound, so some urgent, loud complaint or demand. So my two young children are 4 and almost 6, and a lot of times when they want something, they can be very clamorous and very urgent and complain about wanting it right now in this moment, and don't give me a lot of time to even meet their requests. So here's an example of baby birds, and baby birds definitely make a clamorous complaint for food when they're hungry. So this seemed like a good image to try to remember that word. Number 4 is dissimilar. And if you remove the dis from the beginning, similar, most of us know that something that's similar is the same or very close to being the same. If you put dis, which means not, in front of it, it means not similar. So dissimilar describes anything that is different. So if you're talking about two objects and they're very different from one another, you would describe them as dissimilar. So here's an example of 4 different glasses, and clearly the one that is different color and upside down might be described as dissimilar. 5 is inconsequential. And again, here's a word that has a root in the beginning that totally changes the meaning. So the word consequential means having consequence, having an impact, whereas inconsequential describes something of no consequence. It is valueless. So, it's kind of inconsequential to me whether, students on my day do homework the evening they are assigned it or the next night. Since you always have 2 nights to do it, as long as you understand your homework, it's inconsequential to me when you actually get it done. Everybody has their own schedules, as long as it gets done. So if the impact on me doesn't change, then how it gets done is fairly inconsequential. So it does not have a consequence. It does not have value. And here we have an expired coupon that is totally inconsequential because it's expired and I'm not going to be able to use it anyway. Justification it's a noun, and it's a reason, a fact, a circumstance, or an explanation that proves that something is right, that it's reasonable, that it's just, that it's correct. So a lot of times if, maybe your parent gets upset with you because you did something, but they don't understand why you did it, you might try to give them or provide a justification and say, Mom and Dad, this is what happened. I was late for curfew because so-and-so's car got a flat tire and we were on the side of the freeway. And, so you have this whole reason that's valid that explains why you weren't home in time for curfew. You've provided a justification. Now, whether your parents will then understand, that's kind of up to them. But you have justified, and justify is the verb form, which is, to provide the justification, right? To provide the reasoning. So here's a picture of a guy who looks like he's trying to explain something, maybe trying to provide a justification for a situation or something that's happened. Knavery is a word it's not a word you're going to hear very often in everyday speak, but you will read about it. You will see it in literature, particularly literature that's a little older. And it's deceitfulness or lying or deception in dealing with other people. And a knave is also a person who, displays knavery or possesses knavery, which is this deceitfulness. So anyway, you think of someone who's kind of sly, they're kind of, they do use lies, or maybe not lie so much as they kind of color the truth a little bit to kind of get what they want in their dealings or in their interactions with other people. And here's a gentleman who's clearly, pretending to take an oath to tell the truth, but then he's crossing his fingers because maybe he's going to have to bend that truth a little bit to get what he wants. Myriad is a vast, infinite number of something. A great word to describe a lot of something. So if you have, let's say you walk into a store and you're looking for a particular kind of hairband or whatever, you might have, there might be myriad choices. Or as you're thinking of applying to college, there's myriad choices in terms of where you might want to go for college because there's so many of them, and they are all, they're all very different, offer different things, but you do have a huge selection. And another example of myriad would be like, look, these are all ants. So where there's one ant, there's always many, just to help you think of this word as kind of relating to having a lot of something. Pious describes someone who is religious. Pious just means religious. You'll see this word very frequently. So I have a picture of a woman who's clearly praying, displaying piety. She must be very pious in this picture. Rejuvenate, R-E, means again. So to rejuvenate, to restore your youth, and it's a verb. And so a lot of people, when they're looking to kind of rejuvenate or, they really want to, how do I describe it? They want to kind of, a lot of people I think of this when I think of going to the spa, where you want to restore, you want to bring back, your glow, your beauty, your youthfulness, and you do that by maybe getting a facial, maybe getting a massage, maybe you feel rejuvenated after a great run, or you feel rejuvenated after a really healthy lunch or dinner. But whatever you do to kind of refill your body, to feel healthy, to restore your youth, for some people to rejuvenate your glow, your skin. 11 is scoundrel, and a scoundrel is a man without principle. And so to think about your principles, your values, your morals, the things that guide you in your decision making every day, a scoundrel doesn't worry about those things. He's going to make decisions based on maybe what's best for him in that moment, and is not going to be dictated by his or her principles. So a scoundrel's not a good person. This is not a word with positive connotations. This is the kind of person that won't let their morals get in their way. They're probably not going to feel guilty if they, do something that is against their principles because they don't have a lot of principles. And here's a great picture of Han Solo, who maybe in the beginning of Star Wars would be seen as a scoundrel, although he does kind of change that persona as the Star Wars movies continue. Succinct is concise, to the point, kind of think short and sweet. Something that's short and sweet is succinct, and it describes something that is, like I said, concise, short and sweet, to the point. And so if you're looking for, let's say you're reading a book and you're just really struggling with a chapter or the book itself and you're feeling like that you're not understanding, a lot of students will turn to a resource like Sparks Notes or Cliff Notes and read a very condensed, succinct version of that chapter or that book to try to get a better understanding of what's happening. Because sometimes if you're reading Grapes of Wrath and you're in the middle of a chapter and you're just feeling like, I don't understand anything I'm reading, maybe reading a more succinct version would help you, or helps a lot of students to kind of make sense of it. 13 is transpire, and the root word trans actually means across, through, so it has that sense of movement. So something that transpires, it comes to pass, it happens. So it's basically an event that happens when something transpires. So thinking of any kind of action that's already taken place. So here we have, an accident has already transpired, and now this car is literally being re-hoisted back from its side onto its wheels, probably to be towed away after this accident transpired. 14 is vociferous, and vociferous is making a loud outcry. Now, when we talk about clamorous, there's this idea of a complaint, wanting something, whereas vociferous is just this, it's loud. And so it doesn't necessarily have that complaint element that clamorous does, like clamoring for something, you want something. Whereas if you're vociferous, you're just incredibly loud, or you make an incredibly loud noise. So a lot of times on my drive to school with the kids, they are incredibly vociferous, where they're having a conversation, but they're almost just yelling back and forth when they're right next to each other. I'm often like, okay, why are we yelling? You're right next to each other. So just this idea, this is actually how I feel like in the car sometimes when I listen to them with their, vociferous interactions and crying back and forth and yelling at each other, or just talking really, really loud. And then 15 is wittingly, and it ends with an ly. And when words end with an ly, you should be asking yourself, is this an adverb? And an adverb is a word that describes how something is done. So an adjective describes a noun, whereas an adverb most usually describes a verb. And so when you have the ly on the end, it's just a little tip to be thinking, is this an adverb? Is this describing how something is done? And wittingly is basically describing something that is done with knowledge. It is done by design. So it's not kind of spontaneous. There's a lot of thought behind it, and usually it kind of implies some wit, some kind of intelligent thinking went into it, either because you're trying to be clever or because it's a complex situation and you're trying to tackle it in a really kind of smart way. And so I just have someone kind of thinking about how they're going to do something. So this idea of being, something is being done wittingly, with some intelligence, with some planning.